name's Ben Tice, owner and director of Skol Marketing. We help clients get online with web development and design, and then we also help you enhance your online presence with things like SEO, social media, and SEM, which we're going to talk about here today. But my favorite part of my job is partnering with great organizations like Skol and being able to put on these workshops for people like you to be able to learn more about digital marketing topics. If you're doing this internally or even getting help externally, it's really important, to know what these different types of services and different types of marketing models are, how they're working, and how you can effectively optimize them. So with that said, we're going to be talking about Google Ads today. So welcome, guys. Today, we're going to be talking about intro to Google Ads, growing your business with digital ads, understanding what we're kind of looking about when we say SEM or search engine marketing, and understanding what we're looking at there and how do we actually utilize, create, and optimize ads to grow our business. So we're going to be going over a few things here today. We're going to be talking about basically what is SEM or search engine marketing. What are some of the different ad options that we have? It's quite amazing. If you ran ads or you took even this presentation, say 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was pretty limited on the amount of ads options that you kind of have. Now there is just a huge array of different options to kind of be able to utilize. And that really makes it, beneficial to us as business owners or people that are running ads for different businesses to be able to pick the right one that's right for your campaigns, that's right for your budget and your expertise level when you're looking at implementing SEM. We'll also then getting into actually setting up an account and then kind of creating the ads and accounts. And throughout, we'll go through some different kind of strategy techniques to be able to kind of utilize to help you with your Google Ads. So the first thing I just like to kind of mention is just more kind of some housekeeping things, more or less. And what we're kind of talking about here is one thing to know is search engine marketing is kind of the new term that's used when you start talking about running ads or doing digital advertising. So, again, if you hear the words PPC, pay per click, Google AdWords, all of those types of things, they're essentially just underneath the umbrella of search engine marketing. Search engine marketing is now just more of an all-encompassing term to essentially say, these are all the different options you can be doing with running ads and paying money to run ads on search engines or search engine networks that you'd be able to kind of utilize. And also even to take that even a step below and go specifically to Google, Google now just calls them Google Ads instead of AdWords. And the reason for that is that term is also more encompassing because, again, it also encompasses that you might have display ads or retargeting or YouTube that aren't necessarily dealing with words all the time. So again, they really can mean the same type of things these days. It's just we kind of are calling them differently and kind of categorizing them different. But that's really kind of what we're talking about here when we see the term SEM or search engine marketing, as well as Google Ads. So here's really kind of important to kind of understand is that there are different types of ad programs or platforms or channels kind of out there. So when you decide to say, okay, hey, Ben, I'm going to start running some Google Ads, the next question then honestly comes into, okay, which types of ads should we look at? And we're going to predominantly be focusing on Google Ads / AdWords, kind of more of your classic ads today, just because that's predominantly what people are going to be able to kind of focus on. But these other ones may be very applicable to, again, your business, your different campaigns, and what potentially you want to run as well. So the first one is kind of, these are the classic text ads you see on Google search. Again, this is what we're going to be talking about more so kind of today. They're very complex and you have full control pretty much over everything that we're going to kind of see here today when it comes to kind of the settings and things like that. There's a lot of manual management. Now there is some kind of cool, guidance and recommendations that Google is going to give that we'll even show some examples of, but it really is a lot of manual management and you kind of overseeing the account. And a lot of times we do say you kind of need somewhat of a base knowledge on search and kind of best ROI, return on investment, kind of, again, ad campaigns to really kind of get this. But this is also something where we can start lower, again, and it may start with taking, for instance, this workshop, experimenting and kind of getting our knowledge kind of and getting our feet underneath us to be able to kind of run more complex campaigns. Also, you can target any location that you want. You can discard any location that you want. We can run full e-commerce. These, again, we're just giving you some examples of things, and we'll go much further into it. But these are more of our classic type of ads that you're going to see. Now, one that if at the end of this presentation, you come out of this going, hey, Ben, I was going to run Google ads, but maybe this is just a little bit too much for me and I don't want to go get outside help. I can't afford it. Whatever the situation may be, one option you may want to look at is called Google Ads Express, or they're also called smart campaigns. Really what these are is this is kind of a scaled down kind of, classic ad version that we just got, talked about here on the left. But really what this does is it uses Google AI or artificial intelligence to help you run your campaigns. So you don't get as much control and you have more influence more than kind of control over your ads, but it is a little bit easier because now, again, with that control that you're relinquishing, you're also then being able to get some more help from Google. Now, that may not always help everybody. These are, again, these really are meant for location-based businesses or even, businesses that are kind of well-known. Again, bakers and again, roofers, even web developers potentially could be on there. Again, it's more or less to kind of products or services that are a little bit more well-known and kind of searched. If you have a very, very niche product or service, or a very, very specialized and it's maybe not searched as much, or it just takes a little bit more, again, than your average just kind of basic searches, then AdWords Express may not be for you. But again, there's a lot of small business owners, and there's probably a lot of you tuning in that this would potentially, again, be something you could work with. And we see a lot of people potentially start here, especially if you're doing this yourself, and then start to get your feet underneath you and start to understand even ads at a basic level, and you actually running them and paying for them and setting them up and managing them and optimizing all that fun stuff, and then being able to kind of grow from there. So again, these are just options to potentially kind of look at that might be applicable to you and your business. A couple other ones are then going to be kind of Google display ads. So these are kind of like those visual billboard ads you might see when you go to different sites. You might go to the Star Tribune, you might go to New York Times, literally, again, a ton of sites out there have them. Really what's happening is that Google is essentially, renting out that space on those, again, websites, and then filling in the ads that you as an advertiser are coming to them and saying. What's kind of nice about this is that you can actually select sites based on demographics. So of course, again, what the website is about and things like that, you're able to potentially then kind of target them, demographically. This is very much impression-based marketing though. In that, you're just kind of putting a billboard right in front of your face. You're hoping that they either see it and they get that impression, maybe some branding, but also you most likely want them to potentially kind of click on your ad, but knowing that it's going to be a much lower conversion rate than almost any other ad we're going to talk about, or pretty much any other ad out there. But that again is because it's more like a billboard. Again, when we're driving down the street, seeing a billboard ad is going to be probably less conversion than, Googling something on our phone, or even seeing something in the olden days in the phone book that we're, that we're kind of looking up, so to speak. So again, it's that same methodology, but these can be, beneficial to people, especially when you want to have more of a visual type of campaign, and knowing that you can kind of select certain demographics, knowing the certain type of sites that they can go on. So display ads, can be very cost effective if you do them the right way. And obviously I will say that I encourage you definitely to put a lot of time and effort into creating really graphically appealing type of ads. And honestly, we've seen people, you could use Canva, you can use, again, Photoshop, you can use even Google internally even has a little bit of an editing kind of software. But I will say just one tip, if you're going to look into getting the display ads, make sure that they're really visually pleasing. And it would be something that you would potentially want to click on as a user as well. Now, switching over to Google retargeting or remarketing, here's something that's kind of interesting. So this is essentially taking the same display ads, but now what we're doing is instead of on this display ads, you saying just to Google, hey, I want to go after everybody that is, again, maybe I really want to try to target males that are outdoorsy and, again, kind of fitness types. And Google goes and tries to find those sites. Again, it's very base level kind of demographics. Here, though, you actually are going to say, okay, I'm going to run the same type of ads potentially, again, the same visual ads at that maybe you created, but now there needs to be some type of trigger that, again, that, these ads are showing for. Let me give you an example. You could have an ad that triggers, that essentially says, okay, if they come to my site, I want that to be the trigger. If you've ever, again, gone to an e-commerce site and put something in your cart and then didn't buy it and it followed you around for 3 days, that's Google retargeting or remarketing. You did some type of trigger that website or e-commerce site set up, which was, okay, put something in my cart, maybe go to my site. Even sometimes if you purchase something, there's still a trigger there, and now they're kind of following me around. This works really well for those products or services that are either very high cost and aren't your impulse type of buys, as well as again, products or services that might take some deliberation. So let me give you some examples. Of course, a high cost again, item is pretty self-explanatory. If it's not a $20 pair of sunglasses and we're talking purchase price is hundreds or thousands of dollars, retargeting is a nice way to kind of remind them that they were on your site and remind them of your brand, product, or service. Another one might be, so for instance, if maybe, one client we have is a divorce attorney. Of course, again, looking for a potential divorce attorney is a very intimate thing and probably isn't something that's just, decided upon like that. So that person might be looking at probably 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ones, doing their research as they're contemplating this. That, again, as that divorce attorney, this might be a place to do retargeting, to simply just remind them that they, again, found you previously, and to see if they're interested in kind of talking further. So really what we're getting at here is that Google retargeting remarketing is a fantastic supplemental campaign. So we see a lot of people do some of the classic ads, which again, we're going to be talking a lot about today, and then supplementing it with retargeting, because we can get people in that are actually searching for our products and services with our classic ads, and then also kind of remind them over the next few days or week of us, so that we can kind of stay in touch with them if they're going through that decision-making process. Couple other ones to kind of look at that might be applicable to you, might not. These become a little bit more selective and a little bit more niche. But so one of them is YouTube ads. So these are purely visual and video ads essentially that we're kind of talking about here. So again, running ads in front of YouTube videos and being able to kind of do that, you're paying per kind of view. So these can be really low cost. We've seen, views of less than a penny before, or just a couple pennies, to be able to get someone to watch your video or your ad or things like that. So if you are able to create those visual kind of video motion type of videos, again, this can be a very valuable type of advertising model to kind of look at. You can also target demographics based off their viewing habits. So again, we can even be more specific than even some of the website ones that we were just talking about on display, because all of the stuff that they start viewing and liking and commenting on YouTube is creating them a profile, and then you get to kind of essentially go after that. Very similar to how Facebook or Instagram kind of works. When you like pages and comment on things and share things, there's a certain profile and algorithm that's going to work. Same thing here as you're watching YouTube videos, sharing, commenting, things like that. Now, two other ones that are probably very niche are going to be Google Shopping ads. So this is going to be pretty much only if you have an e-commerce site. So if you're actually selling products on your website, highly recommend to look at Google Shopping. This is like, for instance, when you type in a product and you actually see products listed on the top of Google search, that's going to be Google Shopping ads. We can actually get people to visually see our product, see the price, click on it, and go right to our website. Highly, highly recommend that if you have any e-commerce and you're looking to do ads, that you highly look at Google Shopping ads, because most likely you will see a great ROI with that, just because of the visualization and the pricing and the ease of use of how Google Shopping works. Is something that, again, you should really take a look at and, consider going into. And then last but not least is Google Guaranteed. This is a program that Google came out with a few years ago. It's pretty much Google's versions of Angie's List. So if you're in the kind of, select industries like the home service industries, like your roofers, your painters, your plumbers, and things like that, very similar to, people that you would find on Angie's List. This is going to be, again, for you with kind of Google Guarantee. You have to go through an approval process. What they're essentially doing is they're guaranteeing a customer or a user that they're not going to get screwed over, or that these people are actually verified, professionals. So you actually have to even go through a background check. You have to submit your insurance information. So it's a very highly vetted type of program. But because of that, there's a lot of users, especially when it comes to those types of fields, that very much feel comfortable with that. So again, if you're in kind of the trades or the home services industries, it's something that you should probably highly take a look at, because it can be very valuable to you. It is something different than your Google ad, your Google AdWords, your YouTube ads, even your shopping ads. It's kind of a different platform, but just like all of these are a little bit different from each other, they all share the same thing, that they're under SEM and they're ways to advertise your products or services. So one of the things, just to kind of the basic kind of thing to know about with Google Ads, is that traditional advertising is going to be that you're kind of having the magnifying glass and you're looking for people. Here, when we start talking about classic ads specifically here, is you're putting the magnifying glass into the consumer's hand. So when someone searches for a term that you designate, your ad now will be popping up. Why that's super beneficial is that it really comes down to mindset. When you start running classic Google ads, is you're going after people that you're communicating to Google and designating that they're in a mindset looking for something. They may not make a purchase right now. They may decide against you, but really you're going after people that are almost vetting themselves. Whereas some of those other models, even display, or even, again, social media, YouTube it's kind of a little bit more to the left of traditional, even with here, but specifically Google ads and the classic ads, that's really the uniqueness of them. And the difference is, again, you're going after people that are essentially vetting themselves, because you're telling the system that your ads are only going to show up to certain keywords and phrases that you're going to designate. So this is where we kind of get the pay-per-click, or kind of the classic ads. You'll see that on the right-hand side here is the little, the white and green kind of symbol is what it used to be. And now we just have a black kind of ad symbol right next to ads. So they hide in very well. And, again, it's a far cry from where it used to be, where they used to all have a shaded background. They had a special section, all of that. As marketers, this is great because a lot of users don't know if they're actually an ad or not. Now, again, Google does illegally have to label them that way. That's where we kind of see that. But you can kind of see how they really kind of do flow in, and they look just like an organic search result. And so this is, again, the system that we're going to be talking about here today. If I type in this example that you're seeing on your screen as business consultant, all 4 of these ads are showing up there. Now, what's kind of nice is they're showing up for free and they don't get charged until we actually click on them. But also they determined and they decided on Google that if someone in a geographic area types in business consultant, then that's when I want to kind of be shown. And that's ultimately what we're kind of seeing here. So this is the model, and this is the method that, again, is the most popular type of SEM or Google ads, is the most longevity type of ads, again, out there. And really at the end of the day is where a lot of times people start and then kind of expand to kind of other ones, or do supplemental campaigns, as some of those examples we gave previously in some of the slides. Okay. So with now understanding the different types of accounts that are out there, now we can start to look at, okay, when we're creating our account, or if you've already created an account, it might be something to go back into in some of your settings and to look at some of these types of settings that we can kind of change and you might want to optimize. So the first is, what type of ads do you want to run, or really more or less, what type of network do you want to be on? There are really kind of 2 options here. One is called search network only, and the other one is called search network with display select. Search network only will pretty much essentially just get you on google.com. Search network with display select will also get you onto some of Google's partner sites. Now you can kind of depend, and you can kind of figure this out and maybe play around with this. I actually often like to suggest to people that they do search network only, because again, you get to kind of control this a little bit further. Some of the ads, you don't get to control how they look when they go to the display select. So if you're running a lot of text-based ads, I really do recommend kind of search network only, and to kind of be able to do that. Google will tell you that you're not going to get as big enough reach, and that's partly true, but it's really not how much reach or how many impressions we get. It's going to come down to ROI and quality over quantity. So more often than not, I do recommend looking at search network only. Now, again, a lot of these things that we're recommending, you might have to look at with your own account, because of course there are differences between B2C and B2B. There's differences between different types of product versus service company, different industries, different users, different price points and things like that. But hopefully this will lead you kind of in the right direction, at least get the base knowledge, and then be able to kind of play around for what works best for you and your business. Another thing that's really kind of nice is you can actually start to influence the devices that your ads are running on. So Google essentially splits this into 3 different types of devices, meaning mobile, desktop, and tablet. You can communicate to Google to say, hey, I want my ads to essentially go more to mobile than desktop and tablet. Actually, I want to prioritize desktop, then mobile, then tablet. You can do this by essentially adjusting your bid percentage. So essentially what you're saying is that, hey, if you do mobile, I want to prefer that 10% more. If you want to do less on one, so tablet, maybe I want to prefer that 20% less. That's essentially what we're able to do. And we're able to kind of influence that so that you can be able to, again, decide what devices that you're going to go on. Again, like this can also have a difference for B2B or B2C. Most likely B2B, we see a lot more desktop than mobile. Not always, but we see that a lot. For B2C, we see a lot more mobile than desktop. So that might play a part into your kind of strategy. One thing you might want to do too, though, is leave everything at base so that everything is all equal. And then as you start to run ads for the next, again, weeks, month, quarters, you can start to be able to kind of influence that, because you might be able to see that you're getting a better ROI, maybe an unexpected better ROI on some devices other than others. Another big one, and honestly, again, probably one of the most important things with Google Ads is going to be locations. So you get to decide, of course, where your ads are showing up. So, if you are a local plumber here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, you most likely are going to say, hey, I am going to do these certain zip codes. Or you can say, hey, from Minneapolis, I want to do 30-mile kind of radius from there. That's where my ads are going to kind of run. Of course, you can go outside of that. You can go, all the way national. You can go worldwide. You can say, hey, I want to do, like, here's one that we see a lot potentially is, hey, I'm here in the Twin Cities right now. I'm in St. Paul, and I want to do a 30-mile radius around St. Paul, but I don't want to go into Wisconsin. So then you could actually negate Wisconsin, even though that 30 miles goes over there. So again, you get to control all that, and pretty much anything that you see on Google Maps, you can put into the system. So again, countries, states, of course, are easy, but you could even go into zip codes, sometimes, again, or you can do counties, sometimes townships and things like that, that you're able to search for on Google Maps. That same type of, filtering and qualifications can also be used on locations here. One other important thing with location is you're also going to have 2 options here. So you can be essentially GPS specific, which means that if you put 20 miles around Minneapolis, someone has to be exactly in that radius, and they use that within their device. They use their GPS and their IP address to determine that. They have to be actually physically within that radius in order for the ad to show up. Or what you can do, there's another option that essentially says, okay, well, if they're in Duluth and they're searching for something in Minneapolis and they use the word Minneapolis, then our ad will also show to them. So let me just give you an example there. Is maybe we have a daughter that is looking for a nursing home for her elderly father that's located here in the Twin Cities. Well, she's up in Duluth and she starts typing in, Golden Valley Nursing Home, Minneapolis Senior Care. Well, again, if you only had the GPS specific, your ad wouldn't show up to her because she's physically outside of there. But with the other setting is you're looking at, since they're in Duluth, but they're specifically telling you that they're also looking for your, your geographic area, that then their ad would kind of pull up. That's honestly the recommendation that I, again, recommend, just because, again, they have to pretty much tell the system that they're also looking for, in that location there. But potentially, again, sometimes brick and mortar and things like that, that setting may not be the best for, and maybe you want to do GPS specific there. So just to know, again, you get to control any location, you get to include, negate, but then you also can even do that step further with either that GPS specific or kind of that GPS plus option that we also talked about. Also, budget. It's really important to understand how Google is going to spend your money. So really when it comes to budget is that it is not a monthly budget, even though a lot of us as marketers or as business owners or business professionals really kind of, again, decide budgets on a monthly basis. The thing is that actually used to be the case long time ago. But what was happening though, is you would put in a monthly budget and your ads would be running. And by the 14th of the month, they were already being spent. So what Google has done to try to combat this is they essentially do a daily budget. So essentially you would take your monthly budget divided by 30, and that's essentially going to be your daily budget. So a $500 a month, monthly budget, then with the math goes down to $1666 per day. And that's going to be kind of our monthly budget. We'll get into a little bit here as we kind of go forward of, again, what we should look at when it comes to kind of budgets, but just knowing that a lot of times on the, I'll at least give you like your PSA kind of is going to be at a bare minimum when it comes to classic ads. Your bare minimum ad spend or budget should be approximately $500 to $1,000 per month at the bare minimum to do it. What ends up happening is if you don't have those, because we have to divide it by 30, your daily budget gets too small and your ads can never fully run or run effectively. We end up kind of spinning our wheels. We'll get into that a little bit further here when we start talking about keywords, because that's where cost is derived from. But it is kind of just important to know kind of what you're getting yourself into and how the system kind of works. Also, there are some different bid strategies. And what's kind of nice is as you're going through these, Google is going to explain each one to you. You can decide, hey, I really want to focus on clicks. I want to focus on conversions. I want to focus on just getting people kind of seeing this. The thing with this is there's really no good recommendation. You really have to kind of consider your business, what you're selling, and who you're selling to. And that's going to start to kind of lead you. Clicks, I would say if all of them were at the end of the day, the one that usually ends up being the most prevalent is, again, bid strategy of getting the most clicks. But like I say, it doesn't always come down to that. And sometimes getting more conversions, as long as we have that kind of stuff set up correctly, and we have our website set up for that. Really what it comes down to though, is it's really kind of nice that you have these different types of strategies, and the strategies are revolving around how Google is going to spend your money. Is if they know your methodology and they know what you're trying to accomplish, that's why we tell them our bid strategy. That's ultimately why they're kind of asking for that. And so I recommend when you're going through this, or if you've never really looked at your settings, go back and look at your bid strategy and look at just some of the other options and read them and see if they kind of, again, speak to you or speak to your campaigns that you're trying to do. It should make some correlation and make it a lot easier. Once you start to read them, you should get a sense of, okay, hey, that actually sounds really what I'm trying to do. That one doesn't really sound, quite like me. Things like that will start to come if you just spend a little bit of time and actually read those. And then last but not least in the settings and to kind of look at is ad times. So of course, when we start our ads, they most likely are going to run 24/7, 7 days a week, 24 hours. They're going to be running all the time. That may not be the best thing for you, especially like, for instance, if you're B2B, we see a lot of times we're extended business hours. Maybe we only want to run our ads from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. But also just because, again, you have your ads running at night, knowing that, again, someone actually has to be searching for them and click on them to be able to kind of do something or for you to get charged. Maybe that, again, running ads in the middle of the night also isn't the worst thing. I have a client that does junk removal. Actually, they get quite a bit of hits and a really good ROI when people, again, are probably sitting there at 11 o'clock at night, 2 a.m., and they're just kind of sitting there deciding, hey, I think I'm going to get rid of this junk. I found this company. I'm now going to fill out kind of a referral form and kind of see if I can acquire first. So again, it goes back to your demographic, goes back to your service, goes back to your product, goes back to your company. But again, what's nice is you get to kind of control that. And just like anything, you can also start with doing the default. We're running it 24/7. then you can also restrict that as you start to see some of the data and you start to align an ROI with those different efforts and to see if you can optimize and do better for your account by restricting those times. So now we start getting into organizing our account. So setting up the different kind of campaigns, setting up the different ads, and really kind of, figuring out, how this all kind of works together. So when you start talking about terminology, you really kind of have 5 components, 4 main ones as you're kind of seeing on the screen. The 5th one is just your account as a whole. But really the 4 main kind of components are going to be campaigns, ad groups, ads, and keywords. And you can kind of see with these descriptions how they're essentially kind of aligned, as well as on the right-hand side there, you can actually just see kind of organizationally how these are kind of done. So this is just some examples of them to kind of give you a little bit more specifics. So you kind of saw that green, again, very basic outline. We have our account, then we start setting up our different campaigns. Underneath those are going to be ad groups, ads, and keywords kind of collected together. Well, here's an example of how you could break that out as a real life example. So, again, the account is, maybe I have Ben's Furniture Store. So I've got Ben's Furniture Store right there. Well, again, how we would kind of separate this is campaigns. We could do a campaign about tables, and then we could also do a campaign about beds. The important thing to realize is that your budget, remember that daily budget that we talked about, is set at the campaign level. So if you specifically wanted to say, hey, I want to spend this much on tables, I want to spend this much on beds, that's how you would kind of separate it. And that's why we recommend it that way, because you can control that. If you just did a campaign for furniture and then you put tables as an ad group and beds as an ad group, whatever comes up first, that's what's going to eat the budget. When in doubt, knowing the more specific you can be on Google Ads, the better it's going to be for yourself and the better it's going to be for the health of your campaigns. So you want to try to, again, look at this example here and try to make sure that you're separating, your account effectively and responsibly so it can kind of work for you. So it's really kind of a hierarchy. And you can kind of see how we can break this down even further. So if we have tables, well, now we have different collections of ads and keywords. That's what our ad groups, ads, and keywords are. And we can kind of see that, someone looking for a coffee table, most likely it's better to be more specific and serve them a different ad than a bedside table. Same thing between a sofa bed and a king size bed. You wouldn't want to necessarily put them all together, because if I'm looking for a sofa bed and you keep just telling me king size beds and mattresses and things like that, it's probably not going to correlate, and I'm either not going to click or I'm going to be pretty disappointed right away. And I just cost you, again, a few bucks with that, with that click and going to your website and maybe jumping right off because it doesn't speak to me. So that's ultimately what we're kind of seeing here is, a campaign is going to be kind of a goal or almost like a category. And then an ad group is going to be more of like your specific products or services for those different demographics. Then we get into actually writing the ads. So we get to kind of see, you can do unlimited for each ad. You can also focus on different target markets, or you can start to write, again, do variant ads. So different variations and things like that. Also, because we have different devices, they're also going to look differently. So I think it's also important as you're starting to create these, a lot of times Google Ads on the right-hand side will show you kind of a preview of what that ad is going to look like. So you can kind of see, okay, that's what it looks like on mobile. That's what it looks like on desktop. Because again, you might want to change some of those aspects if it's not looking kind of correct. Another thing to note is when you do create a Google ad, and we're going to go into some strategy and give you guys some examples and some tips here very shortly, but just knowing that when you do create an ad, it does have to go through an approval process. It's part automated, and sometimes there is even a manual process that Google even goes through and looks at some of them and things like that. Again, they're making sure that automated process is going to make sure that you don't have anything, like swear words or things like that. Manual process is just making sure that things are set up kind of correctly. It's really just knowing that it goes through an approval process. It can sometimes take a matter of, a few minutes, an hour, two, it can take up to 24 hours. It's usually not that long, but, again, all in all, it's a pretty fast process. They just want to make sure that the ads are kind of, essentially correct or abiding by their guidelines. Making sure that, for instance, you're not advertising guns or things like that, that they don't allow ads for. And then last but not least, this is pretty much one of the key terms to kind of remember is a quality score. So you're going to have a column in your Google Ads account every time you're looking at your Google Ads, looking at the performance and everything like that, called a quality score. Really what this is this is essentially Google's way of scoring your kind of ad campaign in general. It's not only just your ad itself, it's looking at the keywords that you designate, to the ads that you write, to even the landing page that it's connected to. It takes those three components and then starts to analyze within their kind of own formula to say, this is what we would give this out of 10. That's really the score that we kind of get. And it will kind of explain some of those scores. And obviously that's an indicator for you that if you're getting a score of 4 out of 10, that's not very good. Let's try to see what Google's recommending, as I kind of previously talked about, is yes, you're controlling this, but Google does give you some recommendation and wants to try to help you creating better quality scores, because again, better quality scores for you mean better experiences for their users. And at the end of the day, that's what Google wants. You know, there is some correlation between SEM and SEO, search engine optimization, in that it really is a business relationship with Google. Now, money talks, and so you're going to be able to influence that a little bit more than, for instance, SEO. But there is still that process that it is going to matter to Google what you're kind of doing, and the better user experience you have for their users and the Google users is going to benefit you better as well. And ultimately that can really kind of, boil that down to quality score. Okay, so now when we look at actually kind of creating ads and writing these, here are some just different things. Like here's a screenshot just kind of on top of each other of something as you're going into that you would kind of see. And this may look a little bit different because Google's kind of been expanding this and changing this. Also, what we're going to talk about here is if, for instance, if you go into one of your ads right now and it doesn't look like this is the new version that Google is essentially moving to. You might get some notices over the next several months that says Google is changing to these types of ads by July of this year. Really what that means is, and I'll kind of get into this, is that we're going to have to give them a bunch of titles and descriptions. And instead of just, really what you used to do is used to create one ad, you would come up with the title, you'd come up with the description, and you'd submit that. Then you'd go to another ad and you could use different variations. What Google's now essentially doing is saying, okay, time out here. How about you give me, again, 7 different titles to choose from. You give me 4 different descriptions to choose from, and then we'll cross match and we'll use those at different times to see what works better. It's really kind of nice because really what Google's doing for you is what's called A/B testing inherently within these ads. You used to have to do that kind of manually yourself. Again, you'd have to create this version of an ad, this version of an ad, this one, and then we'd see how they perform. Here, Google's kind of doing that for you automatically, and this is something that Google is kind of changing internally. So if you haven't seen this screenshot or you haven't heard of this process yet, this would be something to kind of familiarize yourself with, because this is what Google, again, is moving towards July of this year. So all of those classic type of ads previously have to get moved over to more of these expanded type of ads. But even with that said, is you can kind of see that we get 30 characters per headline. Now, again, a character is going to be any space, letter, or punctuation. So we have to really be kind of quick and to the point here. So, again, you can kind of see some examples here: area rug cleaning service, oriental and area rug cleaning. You can kind of, again, it goes on and on. If you look to your right, the second to bottom one is a really interesting one, and you can kind of see how this is kind of tagged. This is saying that you can essentially do almost like a keyword title, which means that if they search for something that is related to area rug cleaning, it will take their search, the user search, and actually put that into your headline. This can be super powerful to kind of mix in with your other types of headlines so Google can do some A/B testing. Because it's pretty cool as a user, if I type in the best area rug cleaning near me, and it pretty much takes that. Now, again, it may not take it if it's that long, but it'll take a portion of that and put that right into the ad. And so it allows, again, potentially you to connect with the user that much further. Now, again, I really wouldn't recommend doing all of those. Again, that's what's kind of nice about having these, again, usually like 6 or 7 that you can kind of do, is that you can then kind of decide and you can kind of flow those and mix those into there. Also, another recommendation is, and this is just, this is just studies have shown this visually appeals to people better, is capitalizing the first letter of each word. So you can see in the bottom right, when you want the best, call Northwest, set up your appointment today. You can see that the first letter of each word is capitalized. That's just recommended because visually it looks more appealing, and studies have shown that you can get better click-through rates, called CTR. You can get a better CTR by, again, doing something as simple as that. So just kind of a little tip to kind of look at and kind of do. Also, look to try to mix in some keywords into your ads. So look to, of course, if you're doing ads about area rugs, you're probably naturally going to talk about area rugs anyways, but that's going to be something that you can kind of, flow into them and kind of look at. Also, you want to make sure that you have a call to action. Call us today, set up your appointment, again, those types of things. That's ultimately, again, you want to try to end your description, which this time you have 90 characters. If you can use the 90 characters, great. You want to try to use as much as possible on some, and you can kind of test those. But that's ultimately, we want to try to make sure that we have a call to action at the end. The next really important thing is a display path versus final URL. If you look on the bottom left of your screen at that screenshot, you'll see final URL and then display path. Final URL is essentially just the landing page that you're sending them to. A couple things with this is you want to try to send them to the most specific page possible. So I'll give you some examples. For instance, here is if we're sending them to area rug kind of cleaning services, I should be sending them to an area rug landing page. Try not to send them just to your home page. Try not to send them to, if you maybe just have a rugs page, it maybe be great to have an area rug cleaning page if there's any difference there. Again, just really getting after the more specific you can be, the better. That's ultimately what you want to do for your final URL. But as you can kind of see, sometimes final URLs, especially depending on what your website was built in, again, depending on how you even have your URL or your menu structure, they can be really long, and quite frankly, they can be ugly. So then what we get is what's called the display path. This is simply a made up URL that's going to show up on your ad. It's actually the green. So I'm going to go back screen here real quick. The bottom of your screen here, you see example.com/insurance. That is that's an example of a display path. It's going to just be something that you kind of created for marketing purposes that doesn't exist, but it most likely is going to appeal and look better than your actual URL. What's kind of interesting about this is that you can see the example here is you want to try to utilize, you get actually two kind of sections here. This is an opportunity to put some keywords into there that are probably going to speak to your users. So here is area rugs/rug-cleaning. Those are not only keywords, those also are going to speak very well to the potential user that's seeing your ad. And then last but not least is this is also something that's a little bit newer. To some of you, especially with these newer types of ads, is we get some Google suggestions. You can see the blue bar at the top here, and you can see that the ad strength is good. Well, that's a great start to kind of look at. Then we can see where it might say, as you're going in here, to say, hey, add more headlines, headline suggestions, call to action phrases. It's actually going to use what you're already kind of giving them, and then kind of give you some of those kind of, those suggestions. So it uses a little bit of AI, but you're completely kind of still controlling this, and you can either negate or take some of those suggestions. So this is where it can be really helpful because you're using both of those kind of methodologies in both of those systems to give Google as much information. They're then giving you back as much feedback, and then kind of deciding, how many headlines and which headlines you want along with your descriptions so that they can run those ads for you and do those A/B tests. Okay. So starting to wind down here, like one of the last things that we're going to talk about here is keywords. If you remember at the beginning of the presentation, I said that your budget is derived from the cost of keywords. That is true. So if you're wondering, well, Ben, how much does a search cost? How much do ads cost? It really is dependent on the keywords that you're, targeting. And really how it is it's done by competition, and competition for a geographic area. So for example, I have a client that does ice dam removal. Legitimately, we'll run the same ads here as in Chicago, here in Minnesota and in Chicago. And more often than not, the same exact keywords are 1.5 to 2 times as more expensive here in Minnesota than Chicago because of the competition. So it's something to kind of realize and just understand that there is going to be some competition levels, again, with keywords, and that's how it's derived. Now, you can technically have unlimited keywords per ad and ad group kind of category there, but I do recommend kind of keeping them to around the 10 to 20 kind of keywords. When you get really at that high number, again, even around that 20 mark, again, really above, what starts to happen is you most likely could probably splice that off into maybe another ad group. Because remember, being as specific as possible is going to be what's going to be best and is going to yield you the best ROI. But then we also have what's called match type. And you can see the graph over here as an example of, when we just type in a search term, area rug cleaning, it's called a broad match. You can see that any synonym, any related search, any other relevant variation is going to be pulled up. This might be something maybe you want to kind of start with, but over time, you're going to see that Google's, again, kind of broadness usually is almost too broad for you. You'll get things that are, again, that you'll probably look at them and go, oh, well, I guess I see how that's related, but that's not really what I want to go for. So you can be more specific and, again, have more control over and communicate better to Google the different types of phrases. So you can kind of see some examples here of this. We have our broad match modifier, where we use the plus symbol. Now, this is going to contain the modified term in any order. So for instance, if we did women's hats, we could do woman's hats. Again, so we've got a slight variation, but it still has to have those terms in it. We could then even get more specific with phrase match. If we say women's hats, it's got to be exactly in there somewhere, either before or after words, again, before or after, like for instance, buy women's hats on sale, again, those types of things. But that phrase is in there one way or the other as is. And then finally is exact match. Nothing before, nothing after, we can kind of do exact match. Now you have to be careful with sometimes being too broad and too exact, because too broad will get terms potentially that we don't want that we're paying for. And exact, sometimes, again, people don't search exactly the way you want. And also a lot of times Google, you'll get an error sometimes that say that there's not enough search volume. Believe it or not, you can't just run ads on any search term out there that you want. There has to be kind of a minimum volume. Now, Google doesn't necessarily tell you what that minimum volume is, but they kind of have standards internally that say if you pick a key term that is so specific and it's rarely ever searched, you can't do an ad on it. So you sometimes even have to be a little bit more broad so that Google understands and can kind of, again, go at it that way. So sometimes, again, broad and exact may work, but a lot of times you'll probably start to find yourself really mixing in broad match modifier and phrase match to be, somewhat specific, but not as broad. And last, again, one is called negative keywords or negative match. This one is super critical to the health of your campaign. And if you really want to help and improve the, again, the ROI and optimizing your campaign, you really want to pay attention to negative keywords. Whenever you're running a campaign, there of course are going to be terms that are related to your products, services, your keywords, your brand, whatever, that you don't want to show up for. So to give you an example here is if I'm selling women's hats and maybe my brand is very high-end women's hats, well, I would most likely want to have a negative match for the word baseball because it, again, I don't sell anything with baseball hats. So anytime someone puts in baseball in their search, I know that I don't want to pay for them and they're not my customer. That's an example here. Some other ones that we talk to clients about is, for instance, you might want to have a negative keyword for the word free or cheap, or, again, not expensive, again, things like, if that's not your clientele, if that if someone's looking for, again, free, law advice or free legal advice right away, might not be who you're kind of looking for. Or if someone is already using the word cheap, again, they're already vetting themselves to most likely not be your customer. Now, again, that may not always be the case, but that's an example of something that we see a lot of times with campaigns, that can be a pretty broad negative keyword that can really benefit a lot of us by just having that as in there. So if anybody types in free, whatever, that's related to your keywords, it will negate it. And really what it does is it just doesn't show up for them. Last but not least is understanding kind of the process. So you would put these in, goes through a quick approval process. and we're able to then get our ads up and running as long as our ads are kind of verified. You can add and remove keywords at any time, and that's something that obviously you should be monitoring as the weeks and as the months and as the years go by. AdWords is just not something that you set up and let it run. If you're going to do that, you're going to see a very poor ROI, and you're going to be wasting a lot of money. And then last but not least is making sure, again, you might have all these keywords, but highly recommend that you do some keyword research. Now, what's kind of nice is Google has a tool internally called the Google Keyword Planner tool that I highly encourage you to kind of utilize. It's completely free, and you're able to, again, do some keyword research. You might also, again, like there are other platforms out there like SEMrush or Moz that you might be able to kind of utilize if you want to take it even a step further and have more of a third-party view. You can do that, but ultimately you should be doing some type of keyword research to kind of validate or verify your thinking on some of the keywords that people might be searching for or that you want to be kind of paying for. Okay, last but not least, we're going to kind of talk about before we open it up for some questions and wrap it up is what's called ad extensions. So ad extensions are essentially extensions of your ads, almost supplemental little features to your ads that you can kind of add to this. So like, for instance, to give you some examples of these, if your goal is to get customers to buy from your business location, well, again, you might want to look at the location extension, which shows and actually connects to your Google My Business address, and it gives a link right to your address from there and hyperlinks it. Maybe you want to see an affiliate location extension where you can help people find, again, your products in other locations or other stores. Or maybe also there's also called a call out extension where you can essentially just buy more characters that sits right there. So 24/7 customer support, free delivery might be a way that you can kind of look at that. So if your goal is to get more people to buy from your business location, bang, these are three that might interest you. If you want to get more customers to contact you, the call extension is super powerful. This is one that we recommend for almost every business that's out there, is that you can actually see it puts either your phone number or a tracking phone number if you decide to do it that way. And you can see that right here. What's really kind of cool about the call extension is that if I'm a user and I see your ad and I look at this and go, Ravina Lawn Service, 50% off first service. Wow, that's pretty awesome. I don't even need to go to their website. I'm just going to call them right away. You essentially bypass them trying to even be convinced on your website and want to call you. That's where the call extension can be super, super powerful, because it's essentially tracking calls before someone even gets into your website. So a call extension is highly recommended, and to kind of look at that for your business to kind of be able to have that ad extension on there. Maybe a goal is to get customers to convert on your website. If it's to fill out a form, to schedule a live demo, whatever you may be, again, kind of selling or advertising. So one of them might be a site link extension. You can link, again, to different specific pages on your site, your hours, your order now, your different services. Might speak to someone more clearly than your headline, and you deciding there, you give them some more options on other pages they could do. Maybe the call out extension that we talked about a couple slides ago would also be applicable here. There's another one called structured snippet extension, where we can actually show, again, showcase more information that customers might find more valuable. Like, for instance, it might be a product or service category, and then maybe it's listing the items or the services. You can also do a price extension where you can actually showcase your service or products with their prices right then and there. So some of these might be applicable, some of them not, but really what we can do is we can take our ad and we can expand upon it. What's also kind of cool too with ad extensions is another kind of just, again, psychological thing, is that you're adding extensions. So your ad being this big normally now might be this big. Well, now that takes up more space on the screen, which can potentially help you get more eyeballs and be chosen as well. So those are things to kind of look at when we look at some of the site extensions, some of the ad extensions, and are able to kind of figure out which one is going to work for us from a goal perspective, but also, again, understanding which ones are going to be applicable to our business. Okay, so with that said, is we've talked about SEM. We've talked about kind of our account structure and setting up our accounts and our campaigns, and then our different ad groups, our ads, our keywords. Understand that we can have unlimited amount of keywords, but that's where the cost is derived from, and using those different match modifiers and those negative keywords to really, really, really communicate with Google of who we're going after and what we want them to search. looking at writing those different types of ads and understanding that Google's new system is really doing A/B testing right then and there for us. Then we also talked about those ad extensions and understanding this. We talked about this at the beginning, this whole thing of quality score and SEO. Really, at the end of the day, having better SEO helps, SEM. Having SEM does not help you rank better in SEO, because SEO is having that natural relationship with Google and we're building up trust. But you can also build up your own trust within your own accounts by having those quality scores. So with that said, I want to open it up to any questions you guys may have. Feel free to, again, type them in the chat and I'd be more than happy to kind of answer them. If you guys don't, again, don't get a chance to or don't want to ask a question here, that's why my contact information is up here. That's what we're here for. Again, honestly, feel free to reach out to me anytime with a question. We just love to kind of help people. There's no charge, or anything like that. So if you have, if you're just looking for a question on, hey, so I remember you said this, how does that apply to this? Anything like that, we're able to do, as well as we also do free consultations. Again, if you want to talk, this isn't a sales pitch. If you want to talk about our products or services that we can offer, that's great. But we also realize, as we've talked about several times, there's a lot of different variations or ways that you can go by setting up ads. You might be B2B, you might be B2C, and some of these things might be applicable. You're e-commerce, you're not e-commerce, and stuff like that. So if you are interested in a consultation where we can sit down and talk a little bit more one-on-one about this, we offer them free of charge. All you have to do is just reach out to us. It's our way of giving back and just kind of helping people understand this just a little bit further than sometimes the classroom style that we do. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. And we've got our first question, which is, can ad extensions be tracked in Google Analytics? And the answer is yes. And you can, again, if you connect your accounts correctly and have those, yes, you can track. Google Analytics, can pull over essentially Google Ads and be able to kind of track that for you, and kind of breaks it down with campaigns and ads and things like that. So absolutely. And also, again, it's of course tracked in in Google Ads as well. Now, one of the things to kind of know about here that we just touched on briefly, but is also, like, for instance, this just brings kind of the memory, or this brings it up because you asked about Google Analytics, is you also want to make sure that you set up your conversions. And really what we're talking about here is, if you want to track how many people are filling out a form, you just have to communicate that within Google Analytics to Google AdWords. If you want to track how many people are, clicking on your phone number, it's setting up that conversion. And so, it is really important to kind of connect Google Analytics to Google Ads so that you can get, once people are to your site, you can actually start to see what they're doing. And if they're doing what you want them to do, you're able to kind of track that. I have another question here that says, and we kind of talked about this before, but Ben, how much should we spend on Google Ads? And I get asked that a lot. Like I was saying before, is, when we start talking about cost per click and keywords, I will say an average cost per click is usually $2 to $4. So this is why I say, again, you have to have a minimum of usually $500 at a very, very minimal base to kind of get going, because if you break that math down, that $500 then turns into $16.66 per day. Well, again, if you're getting $2 to $4 per, again, kind of click, then you can start to kind of get, again, 4 to 8 clicks per day. You can kind of start to see, though, that if you start to get those numbers below, you're just not getting enough traffic to your site to really even make it worth it, and your ads can't run. So that's ultimately why we say at a minimum should be 500 or 500 to 1,000 is kind of, at a minimal ideal to kind of be able to give yourself the best, chance. I have seen, honestly, we've seen cost per clicks be, under $1. I've also seen some cost per clicks be over $25. So again, it kind of depends. And this is why you want to watch it on what keywords you're kind of going after and what keywords you're paying for, again, from that. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Like I said, if you guys do, feel free to reach out. Feel free to reach out for a free consultation. And ultimately, but last but not least, is going to be our full workshop schedule. You can kind of see that with our link here. And we partner with great organizations like Score. We also record all of these and put these on our YouTube channel. So if you're unable to kind of catch these live, I encourage you to still stay connected. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you can get to by just YouTube searching Skol Marketing or going to our website. There's a link there. But ultimately, we do these as a way to give back. We love doing them, and we love educating you not only on these strategies and different type of campaigns and techniques, but also the updates that are coming out every single week and month and year, as again, as it pertains to social media and SEO and SEM and analytics and all of that kind of fun stuff. So again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Ben Tice. I hope you guys have a great day, and Skol.